this is your host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. You are all in for a treat today. I am here with Michelle Salazar, and we are going to talk today about all things business, retreats. We're going to learn more about her climb. So let's get started. Michelle, welcome. If you could introduce yourself to the audience, I would appreciate it.
Sure, Julia. Thank you so much for having me today. It's my sincere pleasure to be here. I am a licensed social worker and a licensed independent chemical dependency counselor from Ohio. I'm from a very rural area, all the way on the western side of Ohio, almost to the Indiana border. It's not far to Indiana from here. There are a lot of cows, a lot of wonderful farms, and a small city, and a beautiful lake. We have a beautiful lake too. And I'm a therapist by training, and I have done a lot of different things over my career. And I guess we'll get to that. But basically, that's me. I've got 3 wonderful kids. 2/3 of them are adults. Absolutely rocking the adult world, that early 20s time frame. I'm so proud of them. And my baby girl, she's still in high school. And I'm also a cat mom. For those of you who love cats, hey, shout out to you. I love dogs too, but there's that question. Are you a cat person? Are you a dog person? I love both, but I'm definitely slightly more inclined to the cats. So that's me.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. So tell us more about your climb. How did you get to this point in your career? So was this always what you had envisioned for yourself?
Oh my gosh, no. So I won't tell you how old I am, but my childhood happened in the 70s and my teen years happened in the 80s. So, back then there was this show, the Bob Newhart show, and everybody says, "Oh, how did you pick your profession?" I don't have any wonderful, inspiring story about how I picked what I did, other than as a child, I would watch this Bob Newhart show, and he was a psychologist from Chicago, if any of you remember. And I just flippin' loved how he would creatively just get in the minds of people in a very healing way. And he would use his personality, his strengths, his training, and he would solve some problems. And it's TV, it always works out in the end. And that's not how real life is. But when I was young, he just captured my attention. And then I went to college, and it was just an amazing career choice. Right after graduation, I did the agency gig for 27 years. 27 years. I had every job in the place, from case manager. I'd go out into homes, and looking back, it's amazing that I'm alive today based on some of the very dangerous situations that people go into when they're young and they don't know. So I did that. I did therapy. I did administration. I did supervision. And then one day, about 6 years ago, I just thought, oh, I'm just not aligned with this anymore. It's just not me. And I think it's so important that we're aligned with what we do. And I know, Julia, that's part of your philosophy as far as Compassionate Climb, is that we need to be aligned and we need to be sparked by what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And so I started my private practice. I like to call it my 4th child, because it took a lot to raise, but it was an absolute joy, just like children are. So, Momentum Counseling is my practice. We have 3 locations now, and I started it just as a solo practice. Had no idea, no clue. You ask if I had any idea of where I would be. No, it just it just exploded, and I'm so happy to say that it brings comfort and healing to so many people. I'm super proud of that. It's not something I ever thought that I could accomplish on such a scale. It's a haven for therapists where they can explore their specialties, they can develop a niche, they can feel validated and creative, and it's a haven for clients as well. And wow, no, I never expected it, never.
Well, it's truly remarkable, and I can relate a lot to those steps of the world of working in an agency and kind of working up the ladder and then getting to a point where you're just kind of feeling like this is not in alignment any longer. And it can be very daunting to take that plunge and go off on your own. So tell me about the team that you have created. How many clinicians, and a little bit more about the practice itself.
Well, we have 26 clinicians in 3 different locations, and I have the most amazing team. I'm so grateful to them. I couldn't do any of this, not one bit of it without them. The clerical team, the billing team, the clinical team, my clinical director, they're just tremendous humans who are also dedicated to our wonderful profession.
Mm.
It's like family. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a great feeling.
Mm. So tell me more about how your early experience in an agency influenced how you run your practice, because clearly you were doing something right. I mean, to grow to that level, to have multiple locations, to have it feel like a family, that is a very conscientious thing, whether it feels like it was or not. So, what were some of the pieces that maybe you took with you from those early experiences, and maybe those things that you changed?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. I think allowing autonomy and creativity for the therapists and the clerical staff. We have basic human needs, and Eric Erickson illustrates this so well. I love all his developmental stages and all that. But we have this need for autonomy. We have this need to be trusted to use our strengths and trusted to ask questions if needed, and trusted to make beautiful things in this world and beautiful healing opportunities as clinicians. And so at Momentum, one of the things that I changed up is that counselors and social workers have a lot of autonomy. They can say, hey, Michelle, I want to pursue this specialty, or I want to take this training, and this is my vision. This is what I'd like to do. And I get behind that because I know that if I support that clinician will support a whole bunch of clients in return. If
Mm.
that clinician feels like they are not micromanaged, like they have the flexibility to do what they do best, they will. That's my experience. They will.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, that's a beautiful thing. How do you manage that uncertainty? I mean, I'm assuming you have to have a lot of trust and faith, and this is obviously a profession with, guidelines and ethics. And what is your process for bringing clinicians on, making sure that they are the right fit, and then kind of throughout their employment with you, making sure that it's working?
Wow. So that's a great question. It's like I always have to have my pulse, or have my hand on the pulse of everything, including myself. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the big thing that I try to do is every day I check in with myself. Am I doing enough to bring joy to my life? Am I doing enough self care? Self care is very important. Am I monitoring the systems that I have in place for the practice. Systems are amazing. And if you create the good systems, and my team has helped me create some amazing systems, a lot of it flies on autopilot. When there is a problem, when there is something that's going on, maybe a billing issue or whatever, if a system is in place, it'll catch it. And that is just a joy to have the support of the Momentum team in building and maintaining systems. As far as, that whole counselor, social worker, keeping a hand on that pulse, I want to always have a climate of honesty, and nobody is perfect. No counselor, no social worker, no administrator, no practice owner knows how to handle everything perfectly. And I definitely model imperfection. Julia, I am the most imperfect person that you would ever meet. And I model that. I'm honest with my team, and I'm like, yeah, this is me. I don't know this electronic thing, or I don't know this thing, but let's work it out. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to use a cat reference here. So I believe as a manager, if somebody has, poop in the litter box, you don't encourage them to cover it up with judgment and shame and all that kind of stuff. You encourage them to come to you and say, hey, there's some poop in the litter box, help me fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I, as a manager, know something's going wrong, maybe somebody's stuck with a client, maybe there's a subpoena, or something's going on that may smell a little bit like crap. If the team is conditioned and trained to cover it up through shame, that's what they'll do.
Mm-hmm.
But if they know that we're all partners and, hey, bring this to me, let's troubleshoot it, then they won't cover it up. That's my experience, and that's what I try to live by.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So it sounds like you live it, you embody it, you are okay being vulnerable, acknowledging that you don't know everything, but that you really embrace those opportunities when someone may come to you to not make them feel worse, that they can be who they are and that you're in it together and you're going to tackle it and come up with a process and figure it out. I can see that makes a lot of sense how you've created the team that you have. You did reference honesty in there, people feeling like they can come forward and be forthcoming. That leads me to integrity. So what does integrity mean to you? How would you define it?
I think integrity is being true to that internal spark, that that part of ourselves that speaks to us when we're happy. When we are doing something that aligns with our integrity, it brings us that joy, that
Mm-hmm.
neurotransmitter release, like, yes. So I often feel it when I'm working with a client and we're achieving some milestone and the client is succeeding, and there's that neurotransmitter rush in my brain. It's like, yes, that's my why, in
Mm-hmm.
management and coaching. And I know you do some coaching. Um, we talk about the why. Why do we do what we do on a daily basis? And I think it's so important to be very in tune with that why. And if we're in tune with our why and we're very mindful of what we're doing in this world, I think that is that's a beautiful thing. It leads to much greater productivity, much less anxiety, much less
Mm-hmm.
stress. Is to always stay centered and never forget that why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm. Well, it makes me think of what you were describing before. When you made the choice to start your own practice, you were feeling like things were out of alignment. Is there anything that you do currently with your team to try to provide them with opportunities to pause and reflect and make sure that they are also in alignment?
Yeah, we have different meetings that we do, and I'm in the process of planning a retreat for them, though it's a surprise. I haven't announced it yet.
So this won't
But
air for probably a month, so you've got time.
okay. But speaking of sparking joy, a couple years ago, I met the two most awesome ladies. They are also practice owners, and I met them at a retreat in 2019. And um, I think that there are people that we need in our lives that we just don't even know that we need. And those two people, Lisa and Pam, my business partners, it morphed into this retreat business where we provide destination retreats and beautiful places for professionals. And we've got one coming up this July in the Smoky Mountains. I'm excited about it. But what I want to do is plan one for the Momentum team specifically. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, it's a secret, but yeah, but that's one of the things that I do to maintain that openness. I want to keep them centered. I want to coach them and provide support for them so that they can feel very good about what they do. Because we, as mental health workers, we are the worst at self care in any profession I've ever seen. It's so bad. We talk to our clients about self care. You've got to make time for yourself. It's so important, but do we do it? I mean, Julia, do we really do it? Not as much as we should.
Mm-hmm. So you're making it a point to prioritize that. And what a lucky team you have that you would take something that sparks joy for you and make it accessible to them and do it as a team. Wow. So the retreat piece. So tell me how that you met these women, you went on a retreat. It sounds like you had your own experience that was really positive. You connected with them. How did that morph into what it's become?
Yeah, so earlier in my life, I don't know if these retreats existed and I just didn't know it, but I never did anything like that for myself. I would do small things here and there, but I never took a block of time and dedicated that to my own healing. You know, we have these traumas that hit us throughout life, throughout the day. Some of them are big, some of them are little, but they take a little bite out of our energy. They take a little piece of our soul and they drain us if we're not careful. And, you know, people always say, oh, just do some self care. But unless it's an intentional self care and unless it's self care that you've really thought out that's relevant to you, it just never hit the mark for me. But this first retreat, and I've gone to many since, it it just spoke to me. It was so healing. And yes, I took 4 days off work, but I came home with the most inspired attitude. It fixed my attitude right up. And the productivity that I may have lost during those 4 days where I attended the retreat, definitely it was a huge return on investment. And I just can't say enough about it. So over the past several years since then, my two friends and I, we've gone on several retreats and we've hosted a retreat, and it's just gratifying. Like, you know, I talked about that neurotransmitter release in the brain when you help a client. Well, when you lead a retreat and you sit with a room full of people who are incredibly authentic in that moment, and they're laughing so hard they can't breathe, they're crying, they're sharing, and talk about a neurotransmitter release. It's like what you get from a good therapy session on steroids. It's just incredible to sit with a group of people, whether it's outside or we're doing an inside activity or whatever it is. It's an incredible rush.
Hmm.
And I love being a retreat leader and I love being a retreat participant.
I really appreciate you sharing what that experience is like and what fueled this for you. So, I have personally never been on one, and this year have now signed up for three, four. So, you're getting me even more excited. So, this starts in April. I have one in April, one in May, one in June, and then a summit. So, 3 retreats and a summit, and I can't wait to talk to you more about it. But hearing you describe it, and obviously that is what inspired me to go for it. And I can't wait to come back, and I am sure it will be with a very similar inspiration. I'm sure creativity gets sparked. The connections that you made clearly have carried you. So, the piece that I think about is in order for you to be able to pursue these other endeavors, you must have this confidence in your team, your practice, and that it's going to continue to run smoothly without you there or as accessible. Tell me about that piece for you, being able to kind of step away, but also developing this team and outsourcing and promoting, and how that's all come about to leave you with this confidence to pursue other ventures.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, we as counselors and social workers, we have this intuitive piece to us where if I am in need of a new team member and I'm interviewing someone, I can ask them all the questions that are recommended by all, but I just don't. I just watch them. I have conversations with them. Sure, I ask them about the important stuff, but I want to know how comfortable do they make me feel? Because that tells me what kind of counselor or social worker they're going to be, or what kind of front desk clerical person they're going to be. Are they going to be good with clients? Are they going to make clients feel at home? So I don't have any fancy advice other than be in tune with yourself when you interview, because that's what I try to be. I try to be in tune with myself and catch all those nuances of how the person sitting with me is hitting me. And if I feel good, and this is not scientific whatsoever, it's all about feeling. If I feel good, if I feel comfortable, if I feel safe in the relationship, that's a big thing, to feel safe in a relationship. Then, yeah, heck yeah, come on in, be a part of the team. And
Mm-hmm.
Julia, I could not go anywhere if I didn't have my momentum team. Nowhere at all.
Mm-hmm.
I would be
Mm-hmm.
tied to that office. I wouldn't be able to delegate anything. And delegation is so important. So
Mm.
important.
So, how did that process start? So, it sounds like as time has gone on, you have scaled, you've obviously expanded, you have added, more administrative members of your team. How did that piece come about? And you talked about some of the people that are involved now, but like the actual structure and who's responsible for what. How did you determine that piece and get better with delegation? Because I know that can be really challenging for anyone owning a business, but especially private practice owners.
It is so hard. I compared this practice to like raising a child, and I said it was my fourth child, and it is. And when we raise our kids, for those of you who have kids or who've been instrumental in raising a human being, you you monitor and you nudge the growth, and then you monitor and then you nudge the growth. It's like there's that Japanese proverb: fall down 7 times, get up 8 times. And it's like that way in business, and it's like that way in raising a human. Um, but I think that when we get up, we have to assess what went wrong that made us fall, and we have to be able to pivot and learn. It's like, yes, fall down 7 times, get up 8, but also um, get up and think about what you learned and pivot.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the process that I've used for growing momentum, and people respond well to that. People join me in that. And like I said, there's a climate of imperfection. So when people fall down, they're not afraid to say, hey, I fell down. I
Mm-hmm.
need some help getting up.
Sure. Would you be willing to share a recent fall? So you were talking about how sometimes we might stumble a little bit, but it's really all about that getting back up and where do we go from here? Is there something you can think of recently that?
Oh my gosh. So our practice takes insurance because it's my philosophy that people work hard for their insurance and they should be able to use it. And, some practices don't take insurance, and that's perfectly fine. It's whatever. We all listen to that inner spark and we do
Mm-hmm.
what feels right. So that's what we do. We also take Medicare and Medicaid. And to make a long story short, recently Ohio Medicaid did a huge overhaul in their system. They overhauled everything, and there were lots of changes that we had to adapt to. And there was a lot of falling. Julia, there was a lot of falling by myself as administrator. The billing team, bless their hearts, I freaking love them. I love them so much. We fell so many times, but we would have to get back up, and it wasn't always pleasant. Sometimes we'd skid our knees when we fell, but I mean, overall, we would just try to be joyous together about it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not always possible to be joyous when you fall, but I would say that whole learning curve of any new billing system or any new billing change that a payer throws at you. This was a big change, and we had lots of falls. And I guess life is all about mindset. I can look at that as trauma, as time wasted, because there was a lot of time wasted trying to figure out stuff. But now I'm going to choose to look at that as, as something that we accomplished, the billing team and myself, those clerical wizards that I have. Are we perfect? Heck no. No, we are not. But, it was a chance for us to come through something and be dang proud. And I'm dang proud of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, this inner spark that you speak of is palpable. I mean, it comes through in every question that you're answering and everything that you share. And I'm sure your team obviously feels it. It seems like for you, it's really this perspective that you have, like you're choosing what to focus on. Obviously, there's that opportunity to hone in on the negative and that it was unfortunate and you did expend a lot of time and energy, but you're choosing to focus on the other aspects of it and how you have this incredible team and people that know what they're doing and you came out on the other side. I'm sure that's come from experience. That's something that takes practice. Is that like a natural thing for you, or has that come in time to be able to shift that
Oh,
focus?
yeah, I mean, it's straight up cognitive behavioral therapy. It's that piece of us celebrating the fact that we can choose what we think in our own head.
Mm-hmm. And it works for you.
It does. And is it natural? No, I don't think it's natural for any of us humans to think positively. I think that we have this cave woman defense that's built into our brains to think negatively. In
Yeah.
fact, it has helped us survive. It's a survival thing. So I don't want to totally disregard that. It's a danger warning. I'm not Susie Sunshine by any means, but back in our cave person days, negative thinking allowed us to not be eaten by big tigers and big elephants with
Mm-hmm.
tusks. They probably thought, oh, if I go out hunting today, there's going to be something that's going to eat me. So what did that negative thinking do, or realistic thinking? They were prepared, whatever. And I think that it's that same way in business. If we're prepared, we have this negative thought process that says, oh, my billing, Medicaid is going to change, and I don't like change, and I can't do it, and it's going to be too hard. That's the original thought that goes through my mind, at least. But then I'm like, no, no, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Let's do this. And I think what helps me, and I didn't do this until recently, is to have this actual achievement bank that I have. It's like a Google Doc. And when I do something that I consider significant, I put it on the list. And I never did this as a young person. I wish when I started my career, I would have done this because I would have all these beautiful things to look back on for days when I didn't feel good about myself or whatever, as we do have those days. I would have this huge achievement bank that I had amassed, but I didn't do it until recently. But better late than never, because I've got some things, and defeating the Medicaid dragon is on that list, you can guarantee. But it's just so helpful because we all have imposter syndrome. We all have that negative voice inside us. We don't have to choose to stay there, and we don't have to choose to listen to it forever. Yeah, it's straight up cognitive behavioral theory at work, and I use it. We tell clients all the time, do this, use this skill. But do we do it? It's the same as self-care. We don't always do it. I guess as clinician, I would recommend we practice what we preach.
Absolutely. And what an incredible practice to get into. I've recommended that to clients myself. I have recommended that to clinicians. And are there times when I do that verbally? Because that's how I process. Yes, like I will share with my partner, or I will share with my mother, or I'll share with a close friend. But to actually write it down, and as we know, right, why is journaling such a thing? I mean, there is something from getting it out of your head and onto paper, that actual process of documenting it, but then having it to go back to, remind yourself, reflect. So that's a beautiful thing and a really great takeaway. What are some other tips that you would have? It sounds like you're really clear on who you are and what is in alignment and how to be true to you. What are some tips that you have for those listening to get in alignment and ensure that they are being true to themselves?
Okay, so I try, and I'm going to use the word try because I don't always succeed. I try not to take anything personally. Uh, You know, it's so hard. Someone says, and I do some couples coaching too. So this is a part of what I talk about with couples. Someone says something and our feelings are hurt. We are hurt. Um, but do we really know what's going on in their head? Do we really know their trauma history? Do we know what's triggering them? Do we know anything about their reality at this point? Even if we know them very well, we may not know everything. So I try, and sometimes I fall short, but I try not to take things personally. And I always think of the saying, it's something about a peach. It says, you might be the juiciest, best peach in the orchard, but not everybody likes peaches. And and I just try to live by that. And I get curious. Okay, so someone said something that hurts me. I try to follow up. What is meant by that? In relationships, I think if we're kind and fearless, we can have the most best, awesomest relationships as long as we're being kind and fearless. And again, I use this with couples. We can ask, what did you mean by that? In a very kind way. But if we never ask, if we're filled with fear and we make assumptions and we just tuck it in our hearts and never deal with it, that relationship isn't going to flourish. So I am a huge fan of being kind and being fearless in relationships.
Great takeaways. And it really seems like you embody this, you live this, you promote this, you encourage this. So that's great advice. Anything that we didn't talk about today that you would like to share, that you have going on, or that you think is relevant to our conversation today?
Wow. Yeah, I nothing that we haven't covered. We covered a lot today.
Yeah.
It's such a pleasure to talk with you. I am curious though, Julia, what destinations are you traveling to on your upcoming retreats? Where are you going?
Mm. So I am going to Asheville, North Carolina with Whitney Owens, and then Laura Long's Badass Therapy Retreat in Charleston. And then I am actually going to Kenya with Michelle Maturi. She is hosting a safari retreat, and that one I get to go with my partner and my daughter, which is going to be
Mhm.
life-changing. And then I'm going to Whitney Summit in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, very nice. Yes,
Hmm.
all such beautiful places. And the destinations are the best parts of it. I just love going to destinations, meeting the people there. It's one of the things that lights me up is to travel with people who are important to me. I'm glad you get to take someone or both two people to Kenya. That's
Mm-hmm.
exciting.
I couldn't agree with you more. So it is a big world out there. There is so much to experience. Being able to do that with other individuals. I did a lot of traveling in my life on my own solo. And as much as that was really soul searching, and I have absolutely no regrets, it was incredible. It takes it to a whole nother level when you're experiencing it alongside another person and seeing their reactions to things. And that's a memory that you both share. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, definitely stay tuned. I will be sharing all of the insights that come from this, and I can see planning retreats in my future as well. I see such a benefit to doing that with the team. So I will follow along on your journey. I'm so excited to hear how all of that pans out. What would be one major takeaway from today that you are hoping whoever is listening is still thinking about and the gears are turning when they are no longer listening to this episode?
Okay, so one thing that I always try to live by and tell people is be your own best friend, be your own BFF. And it's not to say that that will result in you being vain, conceited, or alone or isolated. It won't. When we as humans learn to truly love ourselves, it opens up all the love for other people. All the
Mm.
other relationships that we have thrive when we love ourselves. And that is a hard order. It's so hard. It takes work, it takes mindfulness, it takes commitment, it takes nurturing of the
Hmm.
self. But if we can be our own best friend, that's a beautiful thing.
Yes, a worthwhile pursuit for sure. What a great takeaway. So, how can the listeners follow along on your journey, learn more about what you do? What's the best way for them to find you?
Okay, so I do have a coaching website. It's heymichellesalazar.com. Anything that you would need to know to seek me out would be there. I'm also on Facebook, pretty easy to find. Recently on TikTok, it's a new frontier for me. My daughter is helping me out with that big time. Thank
What
you, daughter.
fun!
But yeah, seek me out if I can ever be of
Hmm.
any help. I would be happy to.
Well, Michelle, I cannot thank you enough for your time today, for the wisdom that you imparted, for the incredible team that you've created, and these retreats that you are leading, and all that is going to come from that. So, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.